Hey guys, so a few of you tweeted at me about this video from Kal-El. I'm not really vegan. For those who don't know, Kal-El has been, vegan for a while, I guess. She's been talking about it on her channel, I want to say at least for a few years. She's definitely one of the largest vegan channels. She talks about other things too, but I think predominantly her videos are about being vegan to some extent, so that's pretty cool. So yeah, you guys said this was a really good video, and again, you wanted me to talk about it, and overall, I do think it's a really good video. The theme, I guess, is that she's just saying that vegans are hard on other vegans, and that we shouldn't be hard on people who are struggling to be like the perfect vegan. But there is something, I think there's a big problem with the way that a lot of people, including Kal-El, look at veganism and kind of how they define veganism. It's a very rigid definition that ultimately I think does make veganism a lot harder than it actually is. So just to start, she goes through these several things, kind of 10 things or something like that, that you have to do or have to refrain from in order to be vegan.
I wrote a list of some of the basic rules of being a perfect vegan. No eating anything that may contain even trace amounts of meat, dairy, eggs, honey, or gelatin. No wearing anything that may contain even small amounts of leather, wool, silk, fur, animal hair, anything that came from an animal. No using any beauty products with animal ingredients such as beeswax or carmine. None of that can be tested on animals, so basically nothing from the huge companies like Procter & Gamble. And also you have to make sure that none of those products are sold in mainland China where they require animal testing by law. Make sure your car interior has no leather, including the steering wheel. And make sure your home goods don't have any leather, wool, animal hair, or feather fill. No taking any medicine or prescription drugs that required animal testing trials, which is pretty much all of them. No going to the zoo, SeaWorld, circuses, petting zoos. No candles with beeswax. And a limited selection of wine.
So this is what I'm talking about. This is what I think is very wrong, and Kal-El is not the only one. A lot of vegans think this way. They use this rigid definition of vegan. Well, as she said, if you take medicine, you're not vegan. If you drive a car with a steering wheel that's made from leather, that's covered in leather, you're not vegan. But the thing is, even if you don't do those things, let's say you don't drive a car, let's say you don't take any sort of medication or anything, you still aren't vegan. None of us can truly be vegan. Because essentially, if you boil down all the points that Kal-El makes, her definition, if you boil it down into just a one sentence definition, in order to be vegan, you cannot use any animal or harm any animal, period. And so I think you see where I'm going with this. Do you drive a car at all, even if it's totally vegan, which I think, like Tesla the only one that actually is? But let's say you actually have a vegan car, but you still drive a car or even ride a bike. Well, you're killing insects when you do that. Do you walk around? Just walk around. Again, you're stepping on bugs. Do you live in a house or an apartment? Like, these buildings killed, displaced, who knows how many animals when they were built? Do you use electricity? Power lines electrocute animals all the time. Do you eat food? Even vegan food, even if you're totally vegan? Well, harvesting these foods and just growing these foods, making land for these foods, space for these foods, it kills and displaces a lot of animals. No one is actually vegan when going by this definition. You can't possibly be. The only way you could be, you'd have to be dead. There's no way you can live without causing some amount of animal harm. It's just impossible. And this is why many vegans like myself, and really all vegans, we don't really use this rigid definition. We may portray it that way, but in our own lives, like if you consider yourself vegan, you're not actually going by that definition. But there is a way to define veganism that makes sense and is like actually doable, actually achievable without like killing yourself. Please don't do that. And I think the best one is the one that comes from Vegan Society. Veganism is a way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. So as far as is possible and practicable is the important part there, right? Like, it's not practicable to expect people to give up electricity to go vegan. And it's not possible to not eat. Again, being alive means that some animals are going to die as a result. The point of veganism is to reduce that suffering, reduce the numbers of death that we cause as much as we reasonably can. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that there isn't nuance to veganism, and there aren't topics that we can discuss and things that kind of veganism doesn't cover. So I've talked before about, not every single effort that you make being equal in terms of impact. So recently I talked about cruelty-free, and that obviously eating a vegan diet is a lot more meaningful and has a much bigger impact than buying cruelty-free makeup. Again, unless you're one of these beauty gurus who buys, countless amounts of products and gets all this PR sent to them. But for most of us, we're just not buying that much makeup, right? I mean, I think a lot of us maybe once a month, at the most, or maybe even once a week, but you're buying one little thing, right? It just does not compare to eating animal products every single day, right? Or going vegan and not eating animal products, right? So you're no longer having meat or cheese or something at every single meal. Obviously, that makes a much bigger difference than makeup. And also, the label of vegan can be really limiting. A good example would be palm oil, which Kal-El actually brings up briefly.
And yeah, it has a half teaspoon of milk in it. Actually, side note, I'm more concerned about the palm oil in those candy bars than I am the milk. I think that's causing more destruction.
I think it's a shame that someone who eats a vegan diet avoids palm oil, but let's say they buy, Maybelline foundation or something every few months, or they buy a pair of leather shoes every few years. They can't call themselves vegan. But someone who eats a vegan diet, buys completely cruelty-free vegan makeup, no leather shoes, nothing like that, but they eat Earth Balance every single day, they can call themselves vegan. My point is that the second person is causing a lot more harm by consuming palm oil every day than the other person who's just buying leather a few times a year. And yet the second person kind of gets this moral high ground, right? Of being able to call themselves vegan. Now, obviously in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what you label yourself. And in my mind, the person buying the Maybelline can absolutely call themselves vegan. I don't give a shit. What matters to me is that we're all working towards the same thing. We're all working toward the same goal of reducing animal suffering. This is why I love the reducitarian movement. These people aren't vegan. I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, they are absolutely allies in the effort to reduce animal suffering. And anyone who says that they want to end factory farming and they are voting in ways to encouraging that, so not voting Republican, let's be real, they are allies. There is another side to this, though, that I want to mention briefly, and it's that labels do matter to some extent. So, on a personal level, someone who, eats meat even once a month, even once a week, calling themselves vegan, I have no problem with that. But it is important that vegan means something, at least in a dietary sense, globally, right? Universally. It's important that chefs and people who make food and make food products, it's important that they know what vegan means, that vegan means no animal products. Now, of course, I'm not saying that Kal-El calling herself vegan when she does occasionally eat non-vegan stuff, I'm not saying that she's going to encourage chefs to start giving vegan stuff with animal products because, hey, you eat this stuff sometimes, right? I'm not saying that at all. I just wanted to bring up, I just wanted to bring it up briefly that it's more nuanced, right? I mean, labels are silly to some degree when we're talking about ethics because it's ultimately not a vegan issue. It's just about suffering and trying to do better and trying to reduce suffering. It's not about animals or humans. Do you see what I mean? But on the other hand, it is important that we have these labels because most people do eat animal products, right? So we do need to call ourselves something instead of having to say, oh, hey, can you make me something without meat, without milk, without eggs, without honey? It's useful. Another thing that I want to bring up is freeganism and second-hand clothing. So again, going back to Kal-El's list of things you have to do if you're vegan, you can't eat or wear any animal products, period. So it's not about the consequence of doing that. It's just about the action itself. It's just about the use, I guess, and not so much about the harm. And she talks about feeling bad about not getting rid of non-vegan purses, I think she said, that she had before. She feels bad about not getting rid of those. And in my mind, why? She already had those products, like the harm was already done, right? They were already purchased. I don't see what's the big deal about continuing to use them. If anything, I think it's a much bigger problem to then get rid of like perfectly good purses in order to buy more stuff, right? Like even if you replace it with something vegan, you're still buying something new when you didn't need to. Now, eventually she ended up using the purses.
And I actually sold all of my designer bags and shoes and donated like $1,500 to a farm sanctuary.
That's totally awesome. But again, I think the worry that you're not being vegan by keeping something that you already had, I just don't get that. And it's the same with food. A lot of people have asked me, like, is it okay? I'm going vegan, but I still have all these non-vegan things. Should I just throw them away? I would say no, absolutely. Please don't throw them away. If you don't want to eat them, try to find someone else who will eat them. But waste is never a good thing. I think it's much better to eat the things that you have, and then once you run out, then replace them with vegan stuff. And so the same with freeganism, dumpster diving, whatever you want to call it. I see no issue with people eating animal products that were otherwise going to go to waste, right? So I'm not talking about like a family member buying you meat or something and it's like, oh, okay, well, I didn't purchase it, right? Like you're still supporting factory farming. But if it's literally something that's going to go to waste, if it's something in a dumpster, right? I see no issue with that. Obviously, like be safe about it. Just reminds me of the Portlandia where they just find all this weird stuff. I think he finds like a tiny sweater and then they find all this disgusting food and they're just like throwing up while they're making it or almost throwing up and they find like stuff in the food. Oh God. It's a good show. It's really fun. It's still funny. I just watched the most recent season, I think, or I don't know, the most recent on Netflix. I think it was like season 8. It's still so funny. Point is, the issue for me is not with the eating of the animal product or using of the animal product. It's whether or not doing so causes harm. So buying meat from a grocer, right, from a grocery store obviously supports animal cruelty, but eating someone's like chicken tenders that they were going to throw away, how is that a problem? If anything, it's a good thing. Like, it's great. A freegan who is filling up on people's leftovers is absolutely doing better and causing less impact than someone like me, than a vegan who's just buying like new food all the time. And instead of our respect and admiration for doing something that society sees as like really weird and like you're mooching off of people and shit, they get mocked by vegans too, who are also doing something that society sees as weird. I don't know. It's very frustrating to me. Okay, enough about freeganism. Not really the point of this video. But the bottom line is that I think when we use this rigid definition of veganism, like what Kal-El's doing, and a lot of vegans do this, honestly, where, if you use medication, you're not actually vegan. I think number one, you're going to alienate a lot of people. A lot of people use medication, right? And number two, I think ultimately you're just playing right into the hands of anti-vegans. They do this kind of stuff all the time. They use this definition of veganism to point out how dogmatic, how militant vegans are, to point out what hypocrites we are because, again, all the things that I pointed out. Oh, will you use electricity? Oh, will you drive a car? Obviously, they're not coming from a very honest place, right? They're not looking at veganism honestly. But I can't blame them too much when actual vegans are using that same definition, when actual vegans are telling people who take medication that they're not vegan. I'm not saying that's Kal-El. Again, that's not the point of her video at all. But by using this very rigid definition, she is ultimately continuing this trend and ultimately still agreeing that, look, if you take medication, you aren't really vegan. Now, again, she's not shaming anyone for it, but she's still saying that, like, you're not vegan.
So those are just the ones that I could think of off the top of my head. But as you can see, it doesn't make going vegan as easy as vegans like to make it seem. When you first hear about going vegan, it's like, oh, just don't eat anything that comes from an animal and don't wear anything that comes from an animal. And that, when you say it like that, it seems like, okay, that's not too bad. That's like really not too bad. But there are definitely a lot more layers to it than that.
I agree that a lot of vegans make veganism seem a lot easier than it is, but what I'm talking about is, vegans not being honest or just not really understanding, I think, because they've been vegan so long, that there is a learning curve. There's a lot of things that you have to learn, and it takes time just to learn about going vegan. It takes time to cook, right? It costs money to buy like mock meats and fake cheeses and stuff if you want to go down that route and use those foods, which a lot of people do. That these foods aren't necessarily a satisfying replacement for the foods that people are missing, the non-vegan stuff, and that there are people with certain illnesses and certain allergies that are going to find it even harder to go vegan. But what Kal-El is talking about, again, going back to her definition, she's talking about like someone going vegan, you know, eating a vegan diet, not buying non-vegan makeup or non-vegan clothes or shoes, anything like that, but being told that they're not vegan because they take the pill. But again, this is just incorrect and it's terrible. Like, these critics are making veganism harder by doing this, by essentially saying no one can be vegan. And really what they're doing is being inconsistent, because again, they draw the line at medicine, but they don't draw the line at electricity. They don't draw the line at driving a car. It just makes me sad that Kal-El and other people too, they think that this is what they have to live up to in order to be vegan, because again, it's something they will never achieve. So then she gets into the non-vegan things that she still consumes, she still uses. So she talks about razor, a certain razor that she likes, a certain perfume, one makeup item, movie theater popcorn, and candy bar, like very occasionally, she says. I think in the comments she says like 4 times a year or something like that. So the razor, I don't know if that's because it's like a parent company issue, which I've talked about before. I don't think that's an issue at all. Or it could be, I think the razors all have the strips on it. Maybe the strips have not gelatin, but I guess glycerin. Glycerin is animal-based sometimes, so it could be that. I honestly don't know. That is an area that I don't care about. I just buy whatever razor works for me, if I'm being perfectly honest. I don't even know what I have. I have one of the reusable handles, but the little heads you replace, right? Yeah, I don't know who makes it. I don't know if it's got a strip that's not vegan. I honestly don't know. But the thing that I really like is the thing that she says after she lists those.
Sometimes I just feel so sick of caring about every tiny thing I do. And so I feel like I'm holding on to these like few things that I just don't really care about, because I'm just so sick of structuring my entire life, checking every label, Googling every uncertainty, asking the server to go in the back and pull out this big binder that has every single ingredient of everything. You know, it just, after a certain point, it just becomes exhausting.
So I am so glad that she mentioned this exhaustion and like burnout and just kind of having that like, fuck it kind of thing that all of us have to some extent. I think we need to be aware of that within ourselves. It's a very individual thing, right? Everybody's different. There are vegans who never feel like that, I'm sure. I doubt that's the norm though. And it's not just about veganism. I mean, I'll say for myself, I don't ever feel that way about being vegan. I don't ever feel that way about looking at products or something like that and seeing if it's vegan or not. But when it comes to being environmentally friendly, I absolutely have those like, fuck it, I don't care moments, particularly when it comes to like composting. If it weren't for my partner, I would not do any of that shit, because it's just, for me right now, it's where I draw the line, right? Like, I don't mind recycling because they've got the separate bins, like it's not a big deal. But as far as like dealing with the banana peels and the coffee grounds, like that's where it gets gross to me, and having to separate it, it's such a pain in the ass. Again, if my partner didn't like deal with all that stuff, I would not do it. It would go right into the trash. So while it is important that we're, you know, always striving to be better in like the grand scheme of things, I mean, it's not like every single day you're like, am I doing better than I did yesterday? You know, don't be crazy about it. But, you know, maybe like on a yearly basis or something like that. That is important, but I think it's even more important to recognize where we are at a given time and what we can really like reasonably handle, no matter how silly it is. The reality is that, you know, for Kal-El, those little indulgences, the popcorn, the candy bars, just even though they seem so stupid to her and like, why can't she let them go? Just having those little moments where she can go, fuck it, I don't care right now, and she can just have a candy bar. That could be what's just kind of keeping her sane, keeping her grounded, and allowing her to be vegan the vast majority of the time. We all have the like, fuck it gene to some extent, right? Some more than others. And obviously, if you are someone who easily gets overwhelmed and someone who easily just goes, oh my God, I'm done, you know, like it's probably going to be harder for you to adopt a big change like veganism. So knowing that about yourself, knowing kind of what your triggers are, so to speak, you know, knowing the situations where you tend to kind of feel overwhelmed and to really feel like that can help take the pressure off. So I think the big one for a lot of people is restaurants, right? Like dining out, that's where people just go, oh my God, it's frustrating. You feel like you have to dictate where you're going to eat. You feel like you're the center of attention type of thing. Everyone's looking at you like, oh, are you eating? Like, are you full with what you've got? You know, that sort of thing. Or people just like, what the hell, really? That's what you're eating? Like, it can be a real frustrating, even stressful experience for people. So I think knowing that about yourself and maybe just going, you know what? Maybe right now I don't worry about restaurants. Like, I'll just eat what I eat at restaurants and I'm an at-home vegan, right? I think that would make veganism or vegetarianism or whatever a lot more palatable for people. And third, to Kal-El, like, you are doing so amazing. Having 4 candy bars a year, having popcorn when you go to the movie, Jesus, even if you go to see a movie every week, you are doing such an incredible job. It honestly makes me so sad that fucking purity vegans have made you feel bad and have made you feel like you aren't doing an amazing job. The truth is that you have almost like 2 million subscribers, something like that. You've been talking about animal rights and animal welfare for a long time now. I'm sure you have convinced countless people to change their eating habits and change their purchasing habits. You have done more good for animals than, I don't know, 100 vegans combined. If someone really spends their time making you and others feel bad for eating a candy bar here or there, these people do not have their priorities in the right place. They are very confused. They might be projecting a little bit. I have heard many, many stories of people saying they're vegan and then they are caught eating cheese and all this other shit. So again, I would not take anything these people say personally.
And you know, another really big frustration of mine is shoes. It is so hard to find high quality vegan shoes, guys. I have been looking high and low for 5 years for good vegan shoes, and I have found very few pair.
Yeah, so this is something I've heard from so many people. I don't have any experience with it because I wear like garbage shoes from Target, so I don't have any experience like trying to buy like really nice, you know, non-leather shoes. But again, I've heard it from so many vegans just really complaining about not being able to find good quality, you know, like fake leather shoes, that it's obviously a problem. So yeah, I don't really see the issue with buying leather. I mean, you buy leather shoes, you keep them for a long time, right? They're supposed to last a long time. I don't really see the big issue with that. And of course, Kal-El, you know, she's making an effort to buy something that doesn't have leather, and the only thing that does is like the little bottom of the boot. Who cares? Then she talks about another instance where she was buying a dress. I think it didn't have a tag on it, and then turned out that it was silk, and so she was dragged in the comments. Like, again, what is wrong with people? Like, it was obviously an accident. You know, even if it wasn't an accident, it's like one thing. I don't understand the need to, I guess it sounds a little lame, but like bring yourself up by like putting other people down. You know, I get educating. You know, again, Kal-El didn't know. So I understand. I'm sure a lot of people were just like, hey, I looked up the dress and it actually does have silk. Just wanted to let you know. I see no problem with that. But the reality is, even if there were just like 3 comments from people being assholes, of course those are the ones that Kal-El is going to remember. Again, I just don't understand. If you really feel the need to treat people like that, particularly people who are really trying to be better like Kal-El, like, reanalyze your life. Maybe go see a professional, because that's like not a normal way to behave. So then she mentions something else that you can't do if you're vegan, and that's associating with brands that aren't vegan, right? So like a non-vegan company.
Like, I did a campaign with Daniel Wellington for their little like metal cuff bracelets, and everybody called me out like, oh, you're supporting a company that sells leather.
Obviously, I think that's total bullshit. I think Kal-El is totally right when she says how important it is to support non-vegan companies when they put out vegan products.
Like for instance, Ben & Jerry's. Ben & Jerry's has launched like 10 non-dairy flavors. And yes, I promote those products because I'm excited to see that shift in the market. Now, does Ben & Jerry's profit heavily from the abuse of dairy cows? Yes. Does that feel good? No. But I understand the importance of causing that shift in supply and demand, and I can see a future where Ben & Jerry's is nothing but non-dairy ice cream. I fully believe that that will happen. But will it happen if everyone in the vegan movement is boycotting them? No.
The reality is that we need these huge mega corporations, which invariably are not vegan. We need these companies making vegan products in order to really grow the market.
I would love to know, if you are vegan, what percentage of vegan do you honestly think you are? I would really, really appreciate other vegans coming clean about their few things that they might cheat with or whatever. I think this would be really, really good for the movement.
Okay, so I'm not sure how to answer this, but I'm going to try to do my best. Well, I was going to say I'm 100%, but I guess the razors that I use, I don't know if those are or not, so I guess not. Also, I use the, what is it, VO5 or White Rain, one of those really, really cheap shampoos that are cruelty-free, but they contain, I think, certain ingredients that could be animal derived. I honestly don't know. So again, that's another thing that that might not be vegan, honestly. Those are the only two things that I intentionally buy that could not. And I don't know if it's vegan or not, right? In terms of like accidentally purchasing, which like I don't consider that, like that doesn't make you not vegan, right? But I've talked about that before. So I think I talked about when I went to Taco Bell and ordered a, burrito without cheese. And of course it had cheese on it. And of course I ate the cheese because again, I'm not just going to waste food because what's the point? I already bought it. Oh, another thing. I bought makeup a few months ago. I bought this eyeshadow palette from The Balm and just completely forgot to check if it had carmine in it. Of course it has carmine in it. It's a pretty nice palette. I like the colors a lot. They're real boring, which is cool. Yeah, I find I do that. I think I've done that a few times in the past at least. And I think it's because I so rarely buy makeup that I just don't think about it. Like you know what I mean? Like I think I did it with a Wet n Wild palette. I think I just forget because with food, it's not like cruelty-free vegan, right? There's one thing, like, is it vegan or is it not? Okay, cool. But with makeup, it's like, oh, it's cruelty-free, but is it vegan? So I think I just get in like this, oh, Wet n Wild, oh, it's cruelty-free. Okay, cool. And then it's like, oh, wait, shit, I forgot to check for carmine. Yeah. So yeah, by the correct vegan definition, I guess I'm not actually quite vegan because again, I use these products that may or may not be. And then of course by Kal-El's like rigid definition, no, of course I'm not vegan. I mean, number one, I take medication. I take the birth control pill and I also take citalopram for depression. And I again, live in a house, I drive a car. Pretty sure the steering wheel is leather. And I use electricity. All that kind of stuff. I don't have a percentage. I don't know how the percentage thing works exactly. Like, okay, if I eat a candy bar with a tiny bit of milk in it, am I like 99.99999% vegan? Like, how does it work? Is it based on like the number of non-vegan products that I eat? Or is it based on the amount of non-vegan stuff in a product? Do you see it? Am I overthinking this? Probably. Yeah, so I think the percentage thing is a little weird. It's a little hard to use. But I do think that it's, I don't know, I can see it coming across as maybe more approachable to people because I do think a lot of people, not just vegans, but people in general do have this idea that veganism is extremely rigid, right? And so maybe if more people are saying that they're 90% vegan or something like that, maybe it is more approachable. I don't know. I think I would prefer something like mostly vegan. I think that's easier. I don't know. I don't think it really matters. So I guess that's it. So to wrap it all up, it's important that we have a useful definition of veganism. I think the Vegan Society definition is really good. It's important that we don't shame people for making mistakes, for not being perfect vegans, because there is no such thing as a perfect vegan or a perfect person. It's important that we don't sell veganism as this totally easy thing for everyone to do, because it's not. There's a reason Most people don't stay vegan. That's just the reality. And yeah, I think doing those things, I think just getting into the mindset of like, we're all trying to do better and we're all working toward the same goal of reducing animal suffering. I think that will help temper any feelings we may have of like, oh, this person's not doing it correctly. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. I think if you're always in the mindset of like, wow, they're really trying. Wow, they're really trying. Wow, they're really trying. Like, look where they were a year ago and look where they are now. I think that can really help if you are the type of person who can, I don't know, who's really judgy, just looks at someone making a little mistake, like eating movie theater popcorn. It's like, oh my God, like, how could you? I think really trying to get into the mindset of like, wow, you know, only eating movie theater popcorn, only eating a chocolate bar 4 times a year, that's incredible. You know, relative to the average person, what the average person is eating, that is amazing. Anyway, I think this video is long enough. I hope you enjoyed it. Kal-El, thank you so much for putting more content like this out there. That's just more, I think, encouraging and, I don't know, honest and inspiring. It's awesome. And thank you so much to everyone else for watching. And oh my God, I gotta stop. It's so hot. It's so hot. Subscribe, support the channel. Bye.